I'm Jacinta. Welcome back to my channel, Past That Plant. Today I thought I would show you a few of my favorite houseplants which are made entirely out of cuttings. Each of these houseplants I chopped, propped, rooted in water and then planted. I am going to go through the timeline of each, show you what they looked like when I first planted them in a potting mix, and of course what they look like now. All of these houseplants were rooted in water and are now thriving in potting mix. I will preface this by saying that you can propagate all of these houseplants in a much shorter amount of time. I love hydroplants and water propagations. I love watching the roots grow and also having them dotted around my house. Being so, I leave them for months before I pot them up. Generally, most of these are ready to be transferred to soil within a few months, but I leave them for years. My goal is not to make as many plants or propagations as possible in the shortest amount of time, so that is why some of these time frames are quite long. If your goal is to make as many propagations as possible, you can definitely pot these up much sooner than I did. But if you're like me and just like to potter around and enjoy the look of a water propagation, then you definitely can leave them longer to root. Let's start off with my favorite houseplant and yours as well, which is the Begonia Maculata Wightii, also known as the spotted begonia. This begonia is made of at least 10 different cuttings. I started taking cuttings of this one in November 2023. This plant roots very quickly and I could see roots within a few weeks. I planted all the cuttings in February 2024, so that is 3 months after I took them. And since then she has grown beautifully. I have staked this one with bamboo garden stakes. You don't need to do this. This one does stand up on its own, but I've just added some support because it does sit in a window and it gets quite blustery. Movement is good for houseplants, but these stems are just full of heavy foliage, so keeping her staked makes sure they won't snap. I first planted the cuttings in February 2024, and then in October 2025 I had to repot this plant because it had outgrown the original planter. You can find the full repotting video of the begonia on my channel. Be warned, it is quite stressful. Originally when I potted up the cuttings I did it directly into a ceramic planter, so it was quite hard to get the plant out. Now I have her in a grower's pot within my decorative planter, which will help next time I need to repot. So it's been a just over 2-year journey. Pretty incredible. So if you chop and prop your little begonia now, this is what you can have by 2028. Next, my Monstera Adansonii. This is another plant which I now have staked. I took several cuttings of this Monstera in January 2024 and it was well and truly rooted by April 2024. I potted the cuttings up in August 2024, so this was a much shorter time frame than my begonia. There was quite a few cuttings, so originally I had them into separate pots. In March 2025 I staked Monstera Adansonii cuttings, and then pretty quickly I decided to repot them together. This is why I now have one large planter which has 2 separate plants growing in there, which makes it so lovely and full. It is now January 2026, so it is a full 2 years after I first took the cuttings for this one. I took the cuttings of this one in January 2024 and it is now January 2026. So this is what your plant can look like in 2 years if you take cuttings now. Next up we have my cute little mixed planter, which isn't that little anymore. This one is also on a trellis. In this planter I have 4 different cuttings. We've got Pothos, Monstera siltepecana, Philodendron Brasil, and Scindapsus. It does look like there is neon pothos in here as well, but it's not. It is just the Philodendron Brasil and the different variegations and patterns on the foliage. I took cuttings from all of these vining plants throughout 2024, and they also all rooted throughout 2024. The Scindapsus, Pothos, and the Monstera siltepecana are all very quick to root in water, and you will start seeing roots within weeks. The Philodendron Brasil, or all philodendrons, are a lot slower to root, I have found. That you're more likely looking at months before you'll see any real root growth. So I took cuttings of all these plants throughout 2024 and I potted them up together in February 2025. When I first potted them up, they were all a lot shorter and I was letting them hang over the planter. In October of that same year, so 2025, I decided to add this trellis and I'm really loving it. I still have some sections which are trailing down, but I keep clipping the foliage to the trellis as it grows. Don't be scared to pot lots of different cuttings together. If you are doing a mixed planter, make sure all of your houseplants have the same care. As long as they have similar needs when it comes to watering, the potting mix they're in, sunlight and food, then you can pot them up together. And I think it looks really cute. You can of course also pot up lots of cuttings from the same plant together like I did with the Begonia, which will also give you a full and gorgeous plant cluster. Next up we have the Ficus lyrata, or the Fiddle Leaf Fig plant. I also have the Bambino variety, but we'll focus on the large one first. This is the first time I chopped and propped a Fiddle Leaf Fig, and it was successful, obviously. I took this cutting in July of 2023, so quite a long time ago now. I'm in Australia, if you couldn't tell from my accent. So July is of course winter. I do not recommend taking cuttings in winter, and now I really try and chop and prop my plants in spring and summer. Obviously you can chop and prop your houseplants any time of year, but if you're doing it in the cooler months, the rooting process takes a long time. This one didn't show any signs of roots until spring, so it was over 2 months where I was just looking at a stick and I wasn't sure if it had worked. So once it hit spring and started to warm up and we got more sunlight, I started to see roots finally. I started to see roots in September, and then I potted this one up in February of the following year, so in 2024. That was of course just before autumn, so I did learn my lesson about chopping, propping and planting in the warmer months. As well as the cutting taking a really long time to root, the mother plant also took a long time to show any signs of growing back where I took the cutting. She's very, very tall now. But I did take the cutting back down here and it has grown beautifully, but again it took quite a long time to show any signs of regrowth. I did top this one and I was worried that it just was never going to grow because it took months to, but we got there in the end. Take out my Begonia. It's good to have it staked. Yep. I do have a little tiny friend here today as well. He did not like me moving the fiddle leaf around. This is Alfie. He's fully grown, he's 6. He's a little tiny toy poodle. And yeah, he's very sweet but very scared. No one could ever replace Marvin. We're just looking after him while his papa's in Bali. The Fiddle Leaf Fig Bambino is the smaller version of the Fiddle Leaf Fig. Often it's not sold as that, so if your Fiddle Leaf Fig isn't growing and it's got tiny foliage, you may have the Bambino, so look out for that. The Bambino variety can still grow tall, but the foliage will always stay smaller. I took this cutting in January 2025. I learnt from my mistakes of the Fiddle Leaf Fig and the winter chop. I cut this one in summer. It was fully rooted and ready to pot up by April, but as I've said, I love a water propagation, so I let it grow over the cooler months. Then in December of 2025, so just last month, I potted it up in soil. Since I've potted it up, it has started to grow a new leaf. Lastly, philodendrons. I have a philodendron white princess and a philodendron pink princess. Let's go through them. The philodendron white princess is made up of 2 cuttings, which I took in November. It was quite slow to root, even though I did take it in the warmer months. You think that they would grow quickly, but they really don't. I know I'm contradicting myself, but I saw some good roots in January and then I potted this one up in July. Yes, again in winter. Do as I say, not as I do. When I transferred this one to potting mix, nothing really happened again until the warmer months, but now I have a lot of new foliage. At first it looked a little bit sad when I potted it up. Again, why you should repot in the warmer months. Of course, if you live somewhere that doesn't get cold or dark, then it doesn't matter as much, but if you live somewhere that really has 4 seasons, like I do in Melbourne, Australia, where it goes from mid-40s in summer to -2, 3 in winter, then the seasons will really affect how your plants grow. I'm quite happy with how this one is looking now. I like it more than the mother plant, which is just so laggy that I have chopped and propped it again. Maybe I'll plant the cuttings that I've taken with this one as well to make a really bushy philodendron white princess. If you're wondering how I know this is a white princess and not a white knight, which it was sold to me as, it is because on the stems you can see this lovely pink, which of course means she's a girl, so a princess. The white knight, the stems that stay quite white. Lastly, my philodendron pink princess. The pink princess, I took cuttings in January 2025 and is now January 2026. So this has been the shortest chop, prop and plant, and it was still a year. I took this cutting because the foliage was going all pink, which it still is. These all pink leaves were affecting the growth on the mother plant, so I snipped them off and then propagated the cutting. The latest ones to come in do have some green variegation on them again, which is great. You don't want all pink foliage because it goes brown a lot faster than the green. You can see an example here of how this side with the variegated green and pink is still lovely. This one with all pink is going brown. So this means the all pink leaves will go brown quite quickly, which is not fun for anyone. Again, this one was quite slow to root. I took the cutting in January and I didn't see any real roots until April. And then I waited until the following January, so now January 2026, to pot her up. Let's quickly go through the different methods for each one and the potting mix I used. For the philodendrons, I use an aeroid mix. They are aeroids after all. I buy a ready-made aeroid mix. I know you can make your own, but I don't really want to. I'd rather just buy from the experts, which is what I do. If you are making your own, make sure it's chunky and has lots of orchid bark in there. With propagating philodendrons, I like to let them callous just overnight if they've got thicker stems. So it is the next day and my cuttings have all calloused. This helps to prevent them rotting in the water. For skinnier philodendrons or young ones like the Philodendron Brasil, you do not need to let it callous overnight. You can pop it directly in water. Same with the rest of these plants. So the Pothos, Scindapsus and Monstera siltepecana can all go directly into water. They don't need to callous. For this one, I've used a general indoor potting mix. Now, an indoor potting mix is not the same as just general soil. It has been specifically made for indoor plants, so don't get those confused. I use a general indoor potting mix for Begonia, Pothos, ferns and prayer plants. For my Monstera Adansonii, I didn't let the cuttings callous. You can pop them straight into water. If I was going to propagate the Thai constellation, I would let them callous because they have very thick stems and all that surface area makes it more risky for stem rot. But if you've got a skinny Monstera variety like the siltepecana or the Monstera Adansonii, then you don't need to let it callous. I used an aeroid mix for that one, again because it's an aeroid. For the Ficus lyrata, large and small, I absolutely let them callous first overnight. For the potting mix, I've potted them up in a combination of my indoor potting mix and my aeroid mix, so I just mix that one up together before popping them in. That is it for the full plants that I've chopped, propped and planted today. I do have lots of other ones, of course, including the Ficus elastica or the rubber plant. I also have tutorials on how to propagate lots of other plants. And I also have lots propagating in water, including the Pilea peperonioides. This one is ready to go into a potting mix, but I'm going to leave it for now. I have some other Fiddle Leaf Fig cuttings, which are well and truly ready to pot up, but I'm just leaving this one as a hydro plant. Here are some new cuttings of my Philodendron White Princess. You can see what the roots look like. These cuttings are both growing new foliage. I took these cuttings either in September or October. I know Marvin had just passed and I was feeling upset, to put it lightly, so lots of my plants got a heavy chop. These are the cuttings that I may pot up in my planted ones already to make a very full Philodendron White Princess, so hopefully I like her better. But these ones are quite cute and growing well. I do have some more of the Ficus lyrata cuttings in water. I took these cuttings at the end of January, so it's a few weeks ago. You can see that they're starting to root already. I took the cuttings for this one at the end of December. And it is mid-January and it has little roots. When you take cuttings in the warmer months, it will root faster. I cut both of the stems right back and you can see that they are both branching beautifully already with new growth. Again, this has only been at 3 weeks. I'm seeing a lot of new growth. When I took the cutting in winter, I didn't see any growth for months. This is why people say that you should repot, chop, prop in the warmer months because your plant is actively growing. In the cooler months, they tend to go dormant, which means everything is a lot slower, but still possible. I love propagating houseplants. It is a great skill to learn. You'll end up with more plants for free basically, and it also really benefits the mother plant. I have already showed you the Fiddle Leaf Fig and its regrowth and the new one that I just chopped. The Philodendron White Princess is just ugly, so I'm not going to show you her, but the Pink Princess has branched beautifully, which I've shown in previous videos, but I'll add some clips in here as well. I do have full propagation videos on most of these plants, so you can see the full process, but if you would like an updated video, let me know. It is January. I'm trying to get better at only chopping and propping in the warmer months, so if you want to see a more detailed video of how to propagate any houseplants, any of these, let me know and I can work on that soon. That should into it. Of course, Marvin's coming over. He's had a haircut. Thank you. Good